Afternoon, and welcome everyone. My name is Danielle Stackis, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Relations at the Robert H. Smith School of Business. We're excited that you're able to join us for today's webinar, Branding, Why People Fall in Love with Things, presented by Sara of Best Marketing, LLC. This webinar is part of the Smith Office of Alumni Relations Professional Development webinar series, in which we hope to provide thought-provoking and valuable content that will help alumni like you achieve your personal and professional goals. During the webinar, we encourage you to use the chat box to share any questions or comments you might have for the presenter. Please feel free to submit questions throughout the session, and Liz will address them at the end of the presentation. And as a special note, as many of you may know if you're from Maryland today, we are experiencing a snowstorm, and while we don't anticipate this to disrupt the webinar with any power outages, we just want to mention it ahead of time and apologize in advance if that does happen. So Sara has more than 25 years of experience in the local high-tech community as an entrepreneur, business leader, and angel investor. She was named a 2017 finalist in the DC Inno's 50 on Fire for marketing and advertising excellence in the DC metropolitan area. In 2001, she founded Best Marketing, LLC, to provide tech companies with strategic marketing services and expertise. Since inception, she has worked for more than 90 companies, assisting them increase revenue and speed market adoption for their products. Her client campaigns have won awards from the Direct Marketing Association and has been featured in publications serving the marketing and advertising profession. She is the first woman chair of the Board of Advisors at the Dingman Center of Entrepreneurship, as well as an entrepreneur in residence. As an adjunct marketing professor at the Smith School, she teaches marketing strategy in the MBA program. She conducts workshops and provides mentoring to tech startups that are associated with the region's incubators and accelerators, including Founders Institute, Halcyon, Betamore, ETC, Eastern Foundry, and others. Liz is an angel investor and maintains connections to numerous angel groups in the region. She is a frequent conference speaker on topics related to entrepreneurship, marketing, startups, and angel investing. And of course, she's a Terp. Now we will get started. Liz, take it away.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and welcome everyone. And just to reiterate Danielle's point about our snowy day in DC, who would have thought? Poor little cherry blossoms, we may never see you this time around. Anyway, welcome to Branding, Why We Fall in Love with Things. And today's talk is a little bit of a subset of a much grander and broader and deeper conversation that I have as part of my marketing strategy class. So we're going to touch on a lot of the elements that I go over during a multi-hour format, but we're not going to drag you through all of that today. So I hope you enjoy, and if you have questions along the way, we'll get to them at the very end. So when I work with tech companies, a lot of the issues that they face have to do with their branding. And many of them don't actually understand what is meant by brand in the first place. A lot of them think, oh, you must be talking about our logo. Well, that might be one part of it, but I thought it's important for all of us to be on the same page right from the get-go here. So a brand is really all about image and perception. It's about what those of us as consumers of a company's products or services think about those products or services. And it involves trust. So the company offers a certain promise of the level of quality or experience that we would realize in using their offerings. And as consumers, we either buy into that level of experience and that trust, so we agree and become customers, or we don't. If we didn't experience FedEx delivering those packages overnight the way they would and promise, well, not only would we stop using it, but the brand that they're trying to portray in the market would be seriously harmed. So brand is really a collection of all of these intangibles. It's how all of us perceive those products that we use. Sometimes we're excited about it. Sometimes it meets our expectations. And last night with Uber, it took me forever to call a car and get back to my home. So in my view, Uber's brand for me took a bit of a hit because they didn't live up to their promise. So it's the intangibles as well as the collection of actual experiences, all of which together align to either support that brand promise of the company or miscalculates it. So what are some of the top traits that the brands that we know and love and hopefully will always continue to support have in common? First of all, they deliver the benefits that we want and that we need. Then they imagine to stay relevant over time. So they may have to make changes to their brand promise. They may have to expand it. They may have to pivot and go in a slightly different direction. But in order to stay relevant, they have to adapt to what is happening in the marketplace. They have to react to different competitive influences that may emerge that didn't exist a year ago or 5 years ago. And they have to find ways to stay current. Thirdly, the price of their products or services have to be aligned with the value that us as consumers experience with them. So if Uber is the easy, cost-effective way to get from point A to point B, and all of a sudden it isn't so easy anymore, and we're not getting to point B as quickly and effortlessly as we used to, well, that's going to affect their brand promise to us and how we perceive and react to them. Another trait is that the brands have to be differentiated in a clear enough way from other companies that offer similar or in some cases identical services or products. I'm going to talk a little bit about the way some of the consumer companies that are in very competitive, crowded markets take different approaches to how they set themselves apart. Brands have to stay consistent across all of their marketing activities. So if the brand promise is manifested through a set of television or radio ads, well, that same brand promise needs to be very clear in billboards along the highway or digital ads in different social media sites or on the internet and throughout different forms and channels of communication that that company utilizes. Brands need to stay constant over time. So if they're changing their value proposition, if they're changing their core message to us, it's going to be hard for us to keep track. So if you think about the companies that have been around for the longest and are still relevant, you see how they've been able to adapt with the times, yet maintain their promise. So if you buy a Coca-Cola in the United States in Atlanta, or you buy a Coca-Cola in Athens, Greece, that Coke is going to taste the same. And finally, brands need to be supported. Otherwise, we forget about them. There's a lot of information that all of us as consumers are constantly absorbing every day. And if a company is not giving adequate budget support so that they stay relevant and top of mind to us, well, we're going to very quickly forget about them. And that's when their competitors have a chance to kind of hone it in. So what makes different brands stick out for us, and how do we relate to those brands? So is it that we want to be the James Bond and therefore buying the Aston Martin is our mode of transportation? Or are we in the category of user that is the Dodge Ram truck group? Or are we the new and the up and coming and view Tesla as the transportation of the future? Or are we the low cost transportation seeker and like the little $13,000 Chevy pictured here. So what makes each of these brands unique? What makes each of these brands attract a different type of customer? We're going to talk about some of that. And as women, are we attracted to the Revlon cosmetics because their spokesperson and celebrity endorser Halle Berry is front and center? Do we purchase that because we want to be like her? Or are we of the demographic group that relates to Drew Barrymore, and so we gravitate to CoverGirl? Or are we in the Jennifer Lawrence, highest paid female actress in the US right now, that would rather select very highly expensive Dior cosmetics? And when we think about ladies' shoes, which I think about all the time, what is the real difference between the high price shoes in that top row and the J.C. Penney shoes at the $39.99 or the Payless at $29.99? So is it about walking, or is it about fashion, or is it about being part of a greater community that supports and endorses and affirms what it's like to be the Manolo Blahnik user? So all of those things, in some cases consciously and in other cases subconsciously, make up the rationale behind why we pick one brand over another, why we stay loyal to that brand over time, or why we do brand switching. So let's look at what makes up a brand in the very first place. It's the company name or the product name as part of it. It's the logo or the little graphical icon that's associated with it. It's perhaps a tagline, in some cases an advertising slogan. It's the overall story. Here's what we are about, if it's CoverGirl Cosmetics or Revlon Cosmetics. And in many cases, it's a mascot or a celebrity that combines with all of these other elements of brand, work together to A, grab our attention in the first place, B, hold our attention, C, enable us to buy into the story, and then finally get us to be a buyer of that product. So what makes a good name? Let's just start with the basics there. So most of the good names, if you ask the brand experts, are very short. And those names then are relatively memorable. We want a name that is easy to say, and we want a name that is going to stand out. We want a name that's easy to spell. For some of us that were around in the early days of the .com boom, there were some crazy names that took variations on different letters with different phonetic spellings that, oh my goodness, it was just an effort to be able to pronounce it, much less remember how to spell it. And then ultimately, the right name that's short, memorable, easy to say and spell, has a domain that is identical. When I'm working with early stage companies, I extremely underscore the need that if the domain doesn't match the company name that you want, pick another company name, or be prepared to spend a lot of money to get the domain that matches what you want. We need to make it easy as brand advocates to get our consumers and our target audience to find us and to relate to us. So if we look at a lot of the recent companies, Google, Facebook, Dropbox, Twitter, these are short names. They're easy to say. The way you pronounce them is the same way they are spelled. And in most cases, there isn't a lot of guessing that has to go on. So if we see these 21st century companies are more and more fulfilling those requirements of short, memorable, easy to say and spell with the domain that matches. So when I'm working with companies that are getting started, getting ready to launch, names can be made up. So these are some of the companies that I've worked with in the past. Made up words, mock size, Snap Mobile. They can be everyday words or combinations of words. Mind's Eye, Delight Me, Canvas, actual companies in the DC area. They can be related to a theme, like Bicycle Financial, which has an online platform that makes it easy for people to manage their finances and wealth. Easy as riding a bicycle, they say. Or it could be related to how the product is used. Voice Vibes has a platform that enables public speakers to record themselves and analyze their speaking ability. Are they too fast? Are they too slow? Do they have upspeak? Are they enthusiastic? Are they boring? Are they dull? On and on and on. In many of the business-to-business products, we find that the company names are related to the founders. HP, Cone Resnick, or they're related to the offering, American Telephone and Telegraph. Many of these names over the years and the decades, if they've been around for a long time, end up changing, shortening, and kind of adhering to those criteria that we just went over. So if we look at where company names came from, interesting to see that in many, many cases, they were shortened from something that started much lengthier. So Geico used to be called Government Employees Insurance Company. Nice change there. Nabisco was the National Biscuit Company. Lego came from two Danish words meaning to play well. And IKEA was really the founder's initials, the I and the K. Don't ask me to pronounce that because that's a tricky name. And the place where he grew up is the E and the A. With Comcast, it was a combination or a derivation of two words, communication and broadcast. We all know 7-Eleven is called that because that's when the hours of the store are open. Panera is from the Latin words meaning the time of bread. And eBay, I don't know how many people know that the company was originally named the Echo Bay Technology Group, but they could not get the domain. Echo Bay was already taken, and hence eBay was born. So we see what happens when companies begin with lengthier names and over time and use decide to shorten them, all for the better. Why then do companies change their names? Why did Philip Morris, a big tobacco giant, go from that to Altria? So let me look at a few examples and we can talk about some of those reasons. So Anderson Consulting, some of you may recall, changed its name to Accenture. Why? Big accounting scandal with Enron. ValueJet Airlines, I wonder who among our audience remembers that. Well, they changed their name to AirTran. Why was that? Well, big air crash in the Everglades. And AirTran ultimately got bought by Southwest Airlines. Matsushita Electric Corporation of America. That's quite a mouthful. What did they change their name to? Panasonic. That was their most popular brand. United Telephone, Centel, Central Telephone, and Carolina Telephone, oh my goodness, became Sprint. And that was because they did the consolidation and roll up of all those companies and made it short and sweet. Cherry's Guide to the World Wide Web became Yahoo, and that actually stood for something, according to the then founder, yet another hierarchical, officious oracle, whatever that was. And I'll end with Quantum Computer Services, the company that I worked with in the early 90s that brought me on initially to help them change that name, which I did, and we changed it to America Online. So companies change names for different reasons, as we saw, and in many cases, it's all for the better. So moving on to logos, another component of brand. Why do companies have logos? Well, the image helps solidify the brand name. It makes it easier. A picture is worth 1,000 words. It makes the brand more memorable to us, and it helps to convey the trust that their brand promise lays out for us, as well as the company culture. So do logos have meanings, or are they just cute little squiggles, dashes, and colorful little images? Well, Amazon, you may or may not know, with the arrow that connects the A to the Z, is really all about we sell everything from A to Z. The Hershey Kisses logo, if you look at the dark space between the K and the I, it's a sideways Hershey kiss. In the Goodwill logo, that smiley face is actually also a G, part of their name. The Tostitos logo, if you look at the two T's, they're actually two people holding a chip over the I, which is a little bowl of salsa or dip. Baskin Robbins, if you look at the B and the R and the pink, it's 31, which is what the number of their ice cream flavors were. And FedEx, if you look at the EX, there is a white arrow there, signifying we're going to take your package from here to there. So in many cases, corporations spend a significant amount of time and a significant amount of money in coming up with a logo that supports their brand, as we see in these cases here. When we look at the fashion industry, logos take on another role. In the case of women's handbags, many handbags actually use the logo as part of the product. So with Louis Vuitton handbags, you see their initials throughout the exterior of the fabric, whether it's the leather, whether it's patent leather, whether it's cloth. In Fendi, the upside down and right side up Fs is an integral part of all of their bags. On that top line, interconnecting C's of Chanel, very prominent in all of their handbags as well. And on the lower right, for any women that are on today's call, I think we'll all recognize the red soles of the Christian Louboutin shoes. So even though it's no logo, it becomes an important brand mark for them. So let's move on to mascots. What actually is a mascot, and why do companies have them? So anyone who has spent at least 1 hour watching TV Live has probably seen at least 2 Geico commercials. So their gecko is really, I think, imprinted on all of us, psyches, if you will. But many companies who have used brand mascots very successfully have used them for decades, not just years, but many, many decades. From the Energizer Bunny for the batteries, to the Pillsbury Doughboy, to Tony the Tiger, Mr. Clean, and of course, the Aflac Duck. So mascots in the fast food industry are highly, highly prominent. And in many cases, we relate to those companies because of the mascots. So whether it's the Burger King King, the Taco Bell Chihuahua, Wendy's girl with the red pigtails, and Colonel Sanders with Kentucky Fried Chicken, now obviously KFC, the mascots are almost integral with their story about why we should be consumers of their particular food offering. The number one fast food mascot, I'm wondering if you can guess it, is none other than Ronald McDonald. So fast food is a huge purveyor of mascots. And in the cases that we just saw, we really connect our visibility and our awareness of that company's brand to those mascots. Now, a different flavor of mascot is the celebrity. And lately, meaning in the last 10 years, the role of celebrities hawking every particular kind of brand is just skyrocketed. So George Clooney with Nespresso, Tom Selleck doing reverse mortgages, Cindy Crawford, top center, supermodel for at least 2 decades, is now the celebrity spokesperson for Silestone countertops. We've got Julia Roberts, Lancome. We have Alec Baldwin, Capital One Spark Card, and Pierce Brosnan with the Omega watches. So what are these celebrities trying to do here? It is making those brands more approachable for us because we recognize these people more than we recognize those products or those offerings, or they are ways for those companies to differentiate, whether it's the credit card that has Alec Baldwin as the spokesperson or another credit card. At the end of the day, there's not a lot of differences. So in some cases, the use of a celebrity becomes a differentiating factor for that company. So why do we fall in love? So the brand image, whether it's the combination of the story, the celebrity, the logo, the mascot, the brand promise, either matches our own image of ourselves or the life that we are living. Am I buying the Payless shoes because I'm a thrifty homeowner and I'm watching my money and I'm saving it and I'm not spending it? Or do I want the Gucci shoes because they're the latest model and all of my girlfriends are wearing the latest models of the designers that they like and we all consider us in? The brand image supports our aspirations. Okay, so we're not a super well-known, successful person, but maybe if we buy the Porsche or the Maserati instead of the Ford Fiesta, we might be perceived to be more successful. And that helps us with the aspiration image of where we want our life to be. The brand image can connect us to a wider group of consumers that share the same ideals or the same circumstances that we connect and relate to. We want to be part of, and we want to be part of a bigger thing. And the brand image validates who we are, validates our own social standing. So that's what makes us decide we'll buy the Omega watch instead of the Timex watch kind of thing. So in summary, we fall in love because companies do a very good job of positioning what they offer in a number of ways using all of those brand attributes to reach the target audience that they're trying to go after. And we do a very good job of accepting those brand promises and buying into it, becoming consumers, and being in love with that. So I thank you for your attention. This is my little mascot, Crystal here, who's been very quiet during this call, thankfully. And now I'd be delighted to take any questions. So one that has come in while I was chatting, I will summarize and kind of paraphrase. The question has to do with, do business-to-business companies spend as much time and weigh as much importance on brand as the consumer companies? The answer is yes, but in different ways. So consumers buy things for some very different reasons than businesses buy business products and services. In the most part, businesses are solving problems. The problem might be, I need wood and other raw materials because I build furniture. Their company suppliers have different types of brand promises that are less psychographic and sociographic and more business focused, like we will deliver, we will install, we make it easy for you to do business with us, we make it convenient for you to pay for our products and services by the different pricing models we offer to you. But branding is equally important. It just takes on different manifestations in the B2B world, which is what that's known as, versus the B2C world. Any other questions? Danielle, do you have any that have come into you?
Sure. So the first one is, to what extent is it necessary to support at the sub-brand or product level as opposed to the overall brand equity level?
So a lot of organizations that have more than one product ask that question all the time. And very often, multiple products in the same company are geared to different audiences. And as a result of that, each of those products, or sub-brands as you would say, need as much attention, time, resources, and funding as each other. Companies that are one product companies have the benefit of only having to support one brand. But if we think about the large publicly traded companies, they've got multiple brands, each geared to different audiences, different marketplaces, for different uses. And so each of those needs its own brand strategy as well as its own brand support plan.
Great. Okay. Few questions are coming in here. So what are some strategies for brands that make products that can be considered commodities?
Well, if we look at some of the consumer examples that I talked about, there is a lot of commodities in fast food. So what those fast food companies have done is they've created differentiation by the mascots that they have selected, or they've created differentiation by choosing a celebrity to be their spokesperson. I mean, at the end of the day, a commodity product doesn't necessarily want to have the only distinction be on price, because competitors can always adjust their pricing, and then that differentiation goes out the window. So in the commodity cases, mascots and celebrities, something that you add, can be very, very effective. I'll give one example that I had the senior VP of advertising from the national accounting firm CohnReznick come to one of my classes in the last couple of years. And CohnReznick provides accounting services to corporations. And I mean, how different can one set of accounting services be from another set of accounting services? I mean, there are accounting regulations and you've got to follow the guidelines. And so there's not a whole lot of wiggle room, if you will, and how one firm operates versus another. So what CohnReznick did was to get an outside spokesperson who is well known in one of their core markets, which was New York City. And they ended up selecting a very famous New York Yankee manager, Joe Torre. So they used Joe Torre's presence as a way to grab the attention and differentiate from some of the other accounting firms who operated in their same market.
Okay, another question here. Does the domain extension play a role in marketing your brand? And the example that was given was .com versus .net.
I think the important thing is the domain really needs to match your company name, because you want to make it as easy as possible for your customers to find you. And even if they're not directly typing in the URL and going to Google, if there is a company that has .com and you are not that company, I would either do one of two things: get the .com or change your company name. You can't have it be different. It becomes an extra step that you're making your potential customers take unnecessarily. So you're wasting time and you're wasting the opportunity. As to whether .com is better versus .net, I think the preference is really for .com on the business side. And again, there's a lot of open URLs still available. So get clever and get creative with the names so that you can get something that matches.
Great. So how would you recommend a startup company differentiate themselves from more established similar companies?
Well, I think the first thing a startup needs to look at is what have they done that's different in tackling the product pain point, and what set of value are they bringing that the established competitors are not bringing. So it's really, I would say, starting with a close examination of what are your competitors offering as their value proposition, and what open market position can you take. So begin with the competition.
Okay. Other than potential trademark issues, what other risks are associated with some of the approaches that you shared?
So risks in terms of what? I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll see if,
I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe that person can clarify, and we'll move on to another one.
Sure. So what are some of the digital tactics that you've seen to be extremely effective when a company is on a limited budget?
Digital tactics for advertising, for getting your product name out there? I would say,
so marketing and advertising.
Okay. So it really relates to where do you find your potential buyers. If your buyers are consumers, be able to define them very clearly. Don't just say, oh, well, we sell to women. If you look at those 3 cosmetic ads that I showed, each of those companies are marketing to women, yes, but a different demographic group within the category gender of women. So you need to know where your buyers are first, and then you'll know which are the best channels to get to them. And just because social media exists, that may not be the best way or the most productive way to get in front of your specific buyers. So it's understand the profile and the personas of your buyer or buyers, in case you've got more than one category, and understand where to find them. I see a lot of companies wasting a lot of cycles in doing broad, generic web advertising when they should be going to very specific sites where they can speak to a larger percentage of their target market than the things they're currently doing.
Okay, and we'll take one last question here. How do you know you've created a compelling brand name? Is it more of an outward projection of the company values to its consumers, or testing names in the marketplace?
So it's a little bit of both of those. So it's, do you have the right story that resonates with your audience? So it's understanding what value do you bring to them. You have to know who the them is. If you're not clear on who the them is, then you could never be clear on the right story. Those two have to be in complete alignment. And then take a page out of the big brands strategy book. They don't do anything without testing first. And testing could be focus groups. Testing could be a very small, limited market rollout before they do a wide public market rollout. So talk to your prospects, understand what matters to them, and make sure you're addressing that in your whole brand story and your whole, brand portrayal.
Okay, great. Liz, is there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
No, I think the questions were excellent. It sounds like we might have some startup companies in our ecosystem. I applaud you. I wish you the best. And we hope that there are a couple of tidbits today that would be useful to you as you go forward. And for those of you coming from the big companies and the big brands, I hope you found some of this to be somewhat interesting as well. Appreciate the opportunity, Danielle.
Well, we appreciate your time, Liz, and sharing all your expertise. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope to see you again at our next webinar, Best Practices for Working with Recruiters, happening on Thursday, May 10th at 2 p.m., which is a new time for us, Eastern Time. A recording of today's webinar will be emailed and also posted to the Smith School alumni website. We hope you all have a wonderful day, and go Terps!